At 3:14 a.m., the front door creaked open, but no one had touched it. The lights flickered. The baby monitor crackled. On the kitchen table, a single note in trembling handwriting read, "Don't let it in." But it was already too late. Ava Morgan had never been the social type. Long before her name became something whispered with fear, she was just the artist on the hill, a quiet woman with ink-stained fingers and a 1,000-yard stare. Her house, a weathered A-frame tucked away in the dense woods by Briar Lake, stood like a forgotten secret. Locals only saw her in town every couple of weeks, bundled in oversized coats even in spring, eyes sunken as though she hadn't slept in days. Some said she'd lost someone, a fiancé maybe. Others thought she was just another burnout fleeing city life. No one knew for sure. But whatever haunted Ava before, it was nothing compared to what was coming. The change began subtly. The clerk at the hardware store remembered her buying locks, lots of them. Not just ordinary door locks but industrial-grade deadbolts, chains, even custom-made sliding latches. Then came the blackout curtains, thick wood boards, dozens of nails. She no longer looked at anyone when she spoke. Just kept her head low, her voice barely above a whisper. When asked what all the supplies were for, she simply muttered, "Keeping something out." Over the course of 3 weeks, Ava vanished entirely from public view. Neighbors heard hammering at all hours. One delivery man said she asked him to leave a package at the gate and not step any closer. He told his wife later that her voice had sounded raw, terrified. Like someone who had seen something she couldn't explain and knew no one would believe her. The last confirmed sighting was the night of a thunderstorm, one of those suffocating summer storms that seemed to make the forest itself close in. A jogger passing by swore he saw Ava standing on her porch, staring out into the woods, unmoving, soaked to the bone. She wasn't holding an umbrella. She didn't seem to care that lightning forked the sky behind her. She just stood there, watching something. And then, silence. Days passed. Then a week. When the mail began piling up and no one had seen her for nearly 12 days, the local sheriff's office sent a deputy to check in. They found the front door ajar, but inside the house was a maze of barricades. Every door, every window had been fortified. Some were nailed shut with planks. Others covered in salt lines and strange symbols drawn in charcoal. The kitchen was stripped down, bare of dishes, food, even furniture. But the fridge remained plugged in, humming steadily. Upstairs, the deputy discovered Ava's bedroom. The closet was filled with journals, dozens of them, every page frantic and chaotic. Drawings of an armless, faceless thing with a gaping black void where its mouth should have been. Phrases scrawled over and over, "Don't speak to it. It doesn't knock. It knows your name." But it was what they found taped to the mirror that caused the deputy to call it in. A note, trembling and creased, written in a frantic scrawl. "Don't let it in." No body. No blood. No broken glass or signs of a struggle. Just that sentence. Just that emptiness. The investigation officially concluded that Ava had suffered a psychological break. Her journals were dismissed as the ramblings of someone mentally ill. The house was eventually listed for sale at a significant discount, though realtors had a hard time finding anyone willing to tour it. Locals avoided the property, saying it felt off. Some said you could still hear hammering at night. One teenager swore he saw a light in the attic window, months after power to the house had been shut off. But without a body, there were no charges to file. No case to pursue. Just rumors, fading interest, and that one phrase burned into everyone's memory, "Don't let it in." What they didn't know was that Ava had been trying to contain something, not escape it. Every lock, every boarded window wasn't for keeping the outside world from getting in. It was to keep something inside from getting out. But no one listened. And because of that, someone else would. The Bellamy family arrived on a cloudless afternoon in late October, the kind of day where the golden light makes even the darkest woods seem harmless. Mark and Laura Bellamy had been searching for a new beginning. After suffering the loss of their unborn daughter just 4 months prior, they needed a place where the world could slow down, where healing could begin. When they found the listing for the lakeside house, it felt almost fated. Remote, quiet, surrounded by thick pine trees and a peaceful lake, it promised everything they thought they needed. The low price barely raised an eyebrow. The agent had brushed it off with a vague mention of the previous tenant going missing. Mark was skeptical, but Laura, desperate for escape, insisted. The silence around them seemed like a blessing. They had no idea it was a warning. From the moment they moved in, their 9-year-old son Daniel seemed unsettled. He wasn't frightened exactly, more confused. "There's someone upstairs," he told Laura the second night. She was unpacking boxes in the kitchen and assumed it was his imagination. But he was adamant. "They knock sometimes," he said softly, staring up at the ceiling. "Not on the door. Just, from the wall." Laura laughed it off at first. Kids and their stories, she told herself. It was an old house. Wood creaked. Wind moved strangely in dense trees. But then came the other things. The dog, a golden retriever named Casper, refused to enter the upstairs hallway. Every time they tried to coax him beyond the landing, his hackles raised and he growled, not playfully but as if warning them. One night, he scratched at the back door for hours, desperate to be let outside, even as a cold rain came down in sheets. Mark, ever the rational one, chalked everything up to the stress of moving. But Laura started to notice changes in Daniel. He grew distant, quieter, and began drawing odd sketches of figures with no faces, always lurking behind trees or staring from windows. When she asked where he got the idea, he shrugged. "They come into my dreams. They're looking for a way in." One afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Mark found an old wooden box tucked behind the insulation. Inside was a leather-bound sketchbook. Every page was filled with haunting artwork, charcoal images of a dark figure hovering near doorways, melting into shadows, watching from corners. Some were accompanied by notes. "It waits where the light doesn't reach. Don't face it. Don't talk to it. If it learns your name, it becomes you." They assumed the sketchbook belonged to the previous owner, Ava. Laura tried to dismiss it as the work of a disturbed mind, but that night she dreamt of the same faceless figure, standing over her in bed. When she woke up, Daniel was sleepwalking in the hallway, one hand pressed flat against the wall, whispering a name she didn't recognize. A name she couldn't remember after he said it. The real horror began on the 6th night. They were having dinner when the lights flickered. Just a quick blink like a surge or short. But then the baby monitor in Daniel's room, repurposed as an intercom, began to crackle with static, even though no one was near it. Mark went upstairs, annoyed, assuming it was just a wiring issue. But halfway up the stairs he stopped. There was something breathing. Not Daniel. Something deeper. A slow, wet exhale, dragging through the air like an open wound. When he entered the boys' room, it was ice cold. Every window was shut, the vents sealed. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, awake, staring at the wall. He didn't speak. When Mark asked what was wrong, he simply whispered, "It's in the walls now." The next morning, Mark decided to investigate the crawlspace beneath the house, hoping to find an animal's nest or faulty insulation. As he moved through the narrow space with a flashlight, he noticed a wooden panel that had been nailed over an alcove. Curious, he pulled it free. Behind it was a hollow cavity, and inside, a bundle of pages wrapped in cloth. He brought them inside and unwrapped them on the kitchen table. It was the original note, Ava's final message. But this one was different. The handwriting was shakier. There were smudges of something dark and reddish along the edges. Below the original warning, "Don't let it in," a new line had been added in faint script. "It listens through silence." It was then that Laura realized something else had changed in the house. The quiet wasn't comforting anymore. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was suppression. Like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting. Every time someone spoke above a whisper, the lights dimmed. Every time they turned on the TV or music, it would abruptly shut off. That night, Laura decided to search Ava's journals, the ones she had kept in a box under the stairs. They were more disturbing than the sketches, entries that described sleepless nights, clocks stopping at 3:14 a.m., and something she called the Hollow One. According to Ava, it wasn't a spirit or a demon. It was something worse. A being that waited to be noticed, that needed to be acknowledged to cross over. And once someone let it in, either by voice, thought, or belief, it would never leave. They hadn't invited it in yet. But they were close. And the house. The house wanted them to. The Bellamys decided to host a housewarming party. Not out of celebration, but defiance. Laura believed that filling the home with laughter, with life, might push back whatever darkness had begun to spread through the walls. Mark thought it was a good excuse to feel normal again, even just for an evening. They invited a few close friends from out of town, people who knew nothing of the property's past. People who hadn't heard of Ava Morgan or her warning. The night of the party, things began to go wrong in small, unsettling ways. The guests arrived under a sky so dark it seemed to drink in the stars. The driveway lights flickered constantly as if struggling to stay lit. Inside, music played on a Bluetooth speaker, but every so often the songs would distort, voices elongating, bass notes echoing in strange, impossible patterns. No one mentioned it at first, brushing it off as bad reception. But as the evening wore on, the mood shifted. Guests grew uncomfortable. One couple began to argue quietly in the kitchen, claiming they both felt watched. Another guest, a woman named Rachel, became dizzy and had to lie down in the guest room. She later told Laura that the walls in that room breathed, expanding and contracting with every second she lay there. A glass shattered on the floor, seemingly by itself. And when Mark checked the thermostat, it had dropped to 52 degrees, though the heating system insisted it was running at full power. Then just past 9:30 p.m. the music stopped. Completely. The speaker disconnected and refused to reconnect. Cell phones lost signal. The room went unnaturally still. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but charged. Like something is listening. Like something is waiting. Daniel appeared in the doorway. He looked different, his face pale, his eyes unfocused. He was barefoot, wearing only his pajamas, though he'd been tucked in bed an hour earlier. "It's ready," he whispered. Laura stood slowly, her heart hammering. "What's ready, sweetheart?" He looked at her but didn't seem to see her. His voice came out flat, toneless. "It found the opening. I tried not to let it in. But the door wasn't locked this time." Then he turned and walked back upstairs. Mark rushed after him, Laura at his heels. They followed Daniel into the attic, the place they had boarded up 2 weeks ago after the sounds started coming from inside. The boards were torn down. Nails scattered across the floor. And the trapdoor to the crawlspace above the attic was wide open. A smell seeped down from the space above. Damp earth, rotting wood, and something else, faint but distinct, like metal and old breath. They climbed into the crawlspace and found a shape hunched in the corner. A human-like figure, curled, faceless. Its body seemed covered in cloth or something like it, dark and pulsing faintly. When Mark approached, the figure turned slightly, revealing an absence of features, just a smooth stretch of pale, papery skin. But it leaned toward them. Not to attack. To study. Then it spoke, not with a mouth but from inside their heads. "You open the door." The light from their flashlights died instantly. A gust of wind blasted through the house, slamming doors and knocking over furniture downstairs. Screams erupted below. They stumbled down, finding the guests fleeing, some collapsing on the floor, unable to breathe. Rachel stood near the stairs, whispering words no one recognized, blood trickling from her nose. It didn't want all of them. Just some. The entity had rules. It couldn't invade where it wasn't invited. But it could mimic. It could linger. It could wait for someone to say the wrong thing, open the wrong door, speak its name, even if they didn't realize they'd spoken it. And someone had. That night, the Bellamys tried to leave. Mark backed the car out onto the road, headlights slicing through fog that hadn't been there earlier. But the car wouldn't move past the driveway. The wheels spun. The engine stalled. The fog became so thick they couldn't see their own house. They turned around, only to find the front door wide open, though they'd locked it moments before. Laura went in first. The house had changed. The interior was darker, the walls seemingly further apart, almost breathing in slow, rhythmic pulses. Every photograph on the wall was blurred. In one of them, taken that very day during the party, Laura saw a fifth figure beside them, half-faded, featureless. They hadn't just let it in. It had already become part of them. That night, Daniel vanished from his bed. Mark found the sheets cold, undisturbed. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Just one single handprint on the window pane from the inside, elongated, boneless fingers stretching upward. The Bellamys were never the same. Laura stopped speaking. Mark stopped sleeping. The house remained theirs technically, but it no longer felt like a place people lived. It felt like a skin something else had slipped into. The last neighbor to visit said he heard the Bellamys whispering in the yard at night. Not to each other, but to the trees. To the shadows. Whatever Ava had tried to keep out, they let it in. And now it was looking for the next door to knock on.